everybody, welcome back to the Gentry YouTube channel with me, Jen. I hope you're all doing okay. Today is the last video in the winter theme that I've had running all the way through January, and this one is a fine motor one. Now, I haven't done a fine motor for quite a while on Gentry. It did actually start out as a sensory play one, but the more I practiced and kind of messed around with it, the more I thought actually this is great for fine motor skill development. So stay tuned, we're going to talk about all the different ways that you can use this for a variety of different learners, because fine motor skill development is important whichever developmental stage your learner is at. So I'll talk to you about what you need, and then we'll break it down into learners that are working developmentally under the age of about 2, and also learners that are working between the sort of 2 to 7 pre-operational stage of learning. So let's get started. Now, I'm sure if you're watching, I don't need to tell you about the wonderful benefits of Play-Doh. It is a fantastic thing for strengthening those hands up in that grasp and release. Now, this is essentially a Play-Doh activity, but it uses ready roll icing. Now, you can get that in any supermarket in the baking aisle. It comes as blocks or as a ready rolled sheet, and is a fantastic substitute for Play-Doh and also tastes safe. It also gives off a really, really lovely, sweet, sugary smell, and is bright white as well. So if you're doing a winter theme, it makes a fantastic snow substitute. I actually remember, having little things on a Christmas cake when you're making the Christmas cake with your mum, and actually putting all the little figurines on it and making little tracks in the snow. So that's sort of, I think, where this idea has come from. But yeah, if you're struggling to find bright white Play-Doh, I can highly recommend ready roll icing. Now, all I've done is just roll this out. Now, you can engage your learner with the rolling process if you would like to, if you think they would need that lovely kind of big, gross motor almost rolling action, you can do that. Or you can just prep it and set it out as it is. And then from here, it's about knowing your learner and knowing what it is you are trying to get from your learner. And that depends on their developmental age. So I'm going to start off with those working between the 0 to 2 kind of age, what we call the sensory motor stage of development. And I've talked about this in a lot of my videos before, but this is where your primary way of accessing the world and learning is through your senses. So if you ask most people what the key senses are, most people will be able to tell you the key 5. So vision, hearing, taste, smell, and touch. But we can also add to that vestibular, which is your sense of balance, and we can also add proprioception to that, which is knowing your body in space, and where your limbs are and where your joints are and how they all work. If we're being really pedantic, we can add in interoception into that as well, and that's knowing what's going on internally in your body. So knowing whether you're hungry, thirsty, need the toilet, that kind of stuff. So 8 key senses that we kind of think of whenever we're doing Gentry activities, and this particular one focuses in on touch. Now, we can break those senses down even further if we want to. Now, bear with me with this. I'm hoping I'm not bombarding you with lots of information here, but we can break those senses down furthermore into what we call general senses and special senses. Now, this activity that we're going to do today is going to focus on the general senses. Now, the general senses are things that sort of involve your whole body, really. So we're talking interoception to start off with, so things that are going on internally. Proprioception, so knowing where your body and your limbs are in space, and most importantly, touch. And this one is a great one for the touch sense. Our special senses tend to be vision and hearing and smell and taste, and those kind of ones, and vestibular as well. We're going to keep those to one side, our special senses today. This activity is going to focus in on those general senses. So once we've categorised those senses into general senses and special senses, we can break this down even further. Now, bear with me, this is going to help this all make sense and contextualise the activity. So hang in there, it will make sense. So here we can bring in something called sensory modalities. Now, sensory modalities are about the key receptors that give your brain lots and lots of information about what it's experiencing. So for something like tactile development, which is the activity that we're doing today, we are looking at key sensory modalities of touch, of temperature, of pressure, of pain. These are the kind of key sensory modalities that relate to tactile exploration. So it's worth considering this as a facilitator, because it will help you really focus in on what it is you're trying to bring to your learner. So for this activity, I'm going to really focus in on touch being the sensory modality. I could have gone for temperature, So I could have just focused in on whether this is hot, whether this is cold, but actually what we're going to do is build up the tactile profile. And I've mentioned that in a lot of my videos before. It's about giving your learner lots of different experiences of lots of different sort of tactile inputs, and that's going to engage different neuroreceptors in the brain. So we have neuroreceptors that are responsible for one particular thing. So receptors that are responsible just for understanding bumpy, understanding smooth, understanding chalky. And we want to activate those. We want to kind of get all the neural pathways going for our learner so that they can understand the world better and actually have just a really, really lovely experience of all of the kind of things that we just sort of take for granted. So we can bring that to them through these kind of activities, and that's what we're going to do today. This activity uses Ready Roll Icing. What I've done is I've rolled it out already. As I say, it makes a great Play-Doh substitute. It's bright white as well, so it's brilliant for winter themes. And the best thing about it is that it's silky, silky smooth. So on its own, it creates a really, really lovely sensation for your learner, and is awakening all of those neuroreceptors that tell us what something feels like when it's smooth. So you can just focus in on that and let them have a nice little explore of that straight away. And then you can add things into it to build up that tactile profile. But go slowly. If you're working with a sensory learner, so learners working under that developmental age of 2, this is what you need to do. You need to build it up really, really slowly. So we've got smooth going on to start off with. If we want to, then we can add in some icing sugar. As I say, I use icing sugar all the time. You really do get your money's worth with Gentery, I promise. So we can add that in as well. That's going to create a chalkiness to the icing, and just again give a different tactile experience that's going to fire up different neuroreceptors, still within the sensory modality of touch. A little bit of pressure, potentially the pressure kind of neuroreceptor can be engaged a little bit with this activity, but we're focusing in mainly on touch. So that's going to create an understanding of what chalky stuff feels like. So that's what that's there for. So you can, if you want to, just sprinkle a little bit of that on top and let them explore and experience that as well. And then we've also got these. Now these are silver balls that you can find in the baking aisle. I'm sure you've seen them before. Super cheap, yet super effective. Taste safe, but obviously be aware of choking, so obviously supervise your learner when you're doing it. Now what we can do with these as a facilitator is just stick them into the icing. So you're essentially creating a raised, bumpy texture on the icing. So almost like pre-braille kind of stuff. But what that's going to do is fire up all of those neuroreceptors responsible for understanding bumpy textures. So you could even keep half of your icing smooth or chalky by that point, and then just put some balls on this side just stuck into the icing to create a really nice raised bumpy sensation. Remember, when you're working with sensory learners, it's really important to remember processing time, and I cannot stress enough how long that can take some of our learners, particularly if they've got a multisensory impairment or they're a PMLD learner. The time it takes for the sort of receptors in their skin to reach the brain, process that information, and then externally have that sort of output that goes, yep, I'm going to move my hands in this and explore it further. That can take so much longer than we expect it to. I sometimes get some of the best responses from my learners in the last 10 minutes of a session, where they've had a good 20-25 minutes of just almost sort of sitting there, not really moving their hands, just sort of essentially just thinking really and processing. So actually don't be concerned that if you're not getting an obvious outward signal from them that they're enjoying it or experiencing it or getting some kind of motivation or sort of stimulation from it, that they're not actually processing it. Because actually, if you could see what's going on in their brain all the way through that time, they are processing it. It just takes a lot longer. So be patient. I sometimes think we can't do that sometimes. We're not kind of comfortable in the wait, but actually wait and observe and watch, because that's the really, really important bit. So yeah, just be aware of how long it takes sometimes. Okay, so moving on, if you've got learners that are a little bit further along developmentally, this is a fantastic fine motor skill development activity. So if you've had all of that lovely sensory output and you've explored and experienced, and you know what bumpy feels like, you know what smooth feels like, you know, you've awoken all of that and you've got a really nice big tactile profile at your disposal, you're going to want to strengthen those hands. So I'd probably start off with it in a ball, because kneading it and getting that experience of opening and shutting your hands and really getting those hands going is a great starter. So maybe start with it in a ball if you've got learners that are working on their fine motor skill development, and then just roll it out flat, so you've just got a really nice kind of workspace to work with, and then you can go wild with all kinds of different fine motor skills. We've obviously still got the same things at our disposal, but we're obviously expecting different things from the stimuli. So if you're using icing sugar, this is great for early pincer grip, so you can do sprinkling and just sprinkle it over the top, because they're rubbing their fingers together, which is kind of really nice key action. So you can do a nice little sprinkling action with that. It's going to really engage all those fingers. The great thing about these balls is, again, it's going to engage that pincer grip as well, and you can pick up one ball and then pop it on and then just press down. Woo, there it goes. I actually picked one up. And then you can just press it down with your index finger. And again, that's going to be about isolating our indices and making sure that they can kind of have a little bit of control over their hands. It's worth mentioning here that children's hands are actually not as developed as ours, not even as developed as they're going to be at, say, 8 years old. The bones aren't connected in the same way yet. The muscles aren't connected in the same way yet. They need as much opportunity as possible to strengthen those hands up. We can be so eager as parents and teachers to get children writing, and actually they need all of this stuff first. This is so integral to strengthening their hands. You've got to understand where your hands are to start off with in the space, but you've got to understand how to control them and how to strengthen them way before you whack a pen or a pencil in their hand and expect them to be able to copy and write and have a motivation to do any of those things. This kind of stuff is a prerequisite to writing. This is what they need, particularly when they're sort of 3 and 4. So yeah, just bear in mind that the importance of this kind of stuff really is just as important as them learning to write their name one day. We've engaged our fingers in that. From there, you can even go on to sort of early mark making if you want to. As I say, know your learner and know kind of where they're at. They might be happy just sprinkling and squeezing and poking their fingers in it and putting the balls in and making little patterns with that. But if they do want to do essentially early mark making with it, you can introduce a little bit of blue food colouring with it, and a little fork, because again, that's going to be a similar kind of action eventually to holding a pen, and they can just dip it in there and do some dots and mark make with it and make some swishy things. There's a little knife there as well. Similarly, that's going to be a really nice fine motor skill for them to develop, and these kind of skills are great for eventually being able to kind of cut up their food and all of those kind of skills. It's essentially practicing kind of jabbing and cutting. So yeah, having a kind of fork and a knife to hand is really good for getting those skills up of being able to kind of eat, feed themselves, cut things up and all of those skills. So yeah, they're quite nice ones to add in as well. But again, it's just a motivating activity to do it. It's a little bit more interesting sometimes than just feeding yourself some dinner. It kind of is the same skills fundamentally at its core, but just creates a little bit more kind of sensory awe and wonder. now that I've completely overloaded your entire brain with so much information, I feel like I've been real kind of like verbal diarrhea at you today. So I apologise if you're kind of like mind blown now. But I am really passionate about fine motor skill development and ensuring that the stages of development are right for the learner. So yeah, know your learner, as I always say, and know what your expectations are depending on their developmental stage. And that's me done. Have loads of fun with the activity regardless of what kind of developmental age your learner is and how they're going to access this activity. I'm sure you'll have loads of fun, and if it's successful or you've trialled it out, do give me a message, let me know, or comment down below. It's always nice to read comments on YouTube as well, so please feel free to do that. But that's it. So if you like the video today, give it a like down below, subscribe to the channel, share it around so we can get this out there to more learners, because that's essentially what Gentry is all about. Just want to kind of reach as many people as possible with this. So please do share it and tell people about it. But that's it for the winter theme. I will see you next month for a brand new theme, which will be shortly about to be announced on Instagram or Facebook. So if you're not following those, do follow those, ready for the next theme. But until next time, everybody, take care, and I'll see you all soon. Bye.